Alright, how's it going everybody? So I promised a podcast style video for the bash changes, but we're gonna mix it up a little. I do have a guest. We have Normie. Hello.
Hello.
And I'm mostly gonna let Normie talk today, as he's also speaking for the comp scene. Well, as far as people will let somebody else speak for them. They're not some homogenous hive mind, but you get the idea. I will give a little bit of a disclaimer at the beginning though, because the feedback from top players I've heard so far is not very convincing. It is clear as day that many of them do not like the changes and their whining clearly shows that. They're not really making a solid case. All I hear is, I can't be able to react anymore, now I need to make a read. Well, yeah, that's like 99.9% of the player base. We have to do that already. They're not garnering any sympathy, many just look like whiny twats. So I will let Normie make his case now since he's offering an alternative. Whether that one is feasible and can be implemented, we won't know. Technical limitations, budget restrictions, all of that is out of our control, and all we can do is give that feedback. So there you go. Explain to us why you think that speeding up bashes is not the way to go forward.
All right. It's probably the biggest thing I have to mention before. There's like 3-4 things that I need to mention before I get into the actual meat of the TG and the bash issues. And I think that's one thing that is true, and that's the concept of reactability is not understood properly. It's misinterpreted at from what I can tell, every level of play, from low level to high level to whatever. And this ended up in, for example, because of the casual player base fighting a player that's better than them, who will react to some stuff, they will go out and say, my offense never hits anyone because they're reacting, when in fact they probably haven't even fought a player who can react. And then from the com side of things, people are trying to boast their reactions and say that, oh, this is reactable, and I can react to this when they can't in a real environment. Kind of like how we saw with the Nusha TG, where a lot of top reaction players said, oh, it's reactable, and it turned out it isn't. So all of this stuff just makes reaction seem like much more of a problem than they really are, and makes offense seem like it just does not work at high level at all. If you have anything that's 500 ms, any light, any bash, like it's reactable, it's never gonna hit. And I feel like that creates a really bad image for this whole thing, and pushes towards bad changes to this sort of stuff. Like we've seen defense be nerfed in the past few patches over and over again, with offense being buffed over and over again. And now we're at a position where defense is pretty much non-existent. And whenever you have to defend yourself and you're forced to defend yourself, you have to make a incredibly unfavorable read, like a 1 in 5 or usually worse. So that's a really big asterisk when it comes to reactability of things. Some offense actually works way better at high level than it does at low level. For example, I know this is gonna sound very weird to most people, but Black Prior has, for the most part, 100% unreactable offense from neutral due to his bash combined with his dodge forward heavy. People cannot distinguish between that enough to make it reactable, and it's sort of like forcing a read, but it's not as unfavorable as just making the bash unreactable from neutral. So I'm going to get into that later, to other moves, whatever, what people want, what people don't want, but that's my reactability thing. Another thing which is directly tied to that is feedback issues. As far as I know, a lot of the feedback is taken from places like the Competitive For Honor subreddit, which, while the people in there, from what I've seen, know the mechanics of the game, they know what the numbers are, they know what does what and how the game works. However, they are not top level players, they're not competitive players. The actual comp community is smaller than that, and mostly everyone does not want to go there, avoids places like Reddit because of this sort of like area where people pretend they know what they're doing, but they don't really. So having stuff like that, most comp players don't get to share their opinion on a platform on something, like something that will get actually noticed. Like how I'm getting an opportunity to talk on YouTube when I don't have a YouTube myself. I don't do that sort of stuff. We don't go on Reddit. It's very low key compared to the casual part of the game. So then you have casuals giving the casual feedback, which is perfectly fine, and then you also have casuals giving the competitive feedback, which that along with, like I said earlier, some bad feedback from competitive, some bad feedback from casual, you just create a sort of salad of nothing, and you just don't get anything useful out of it. With hopefully in the future stuff will get filtered out a little bit, and the right people will get to say the right things. But feedback, I think personally, is really bad right now towards anyone. Like anybody giving feedback is bad because it's interpreted wrong. That's all. Um, I guess it's the Bash TG timer. So, why are competitive players against the Bash TG? The first answer is very simple and very straightforward. A lot of the competitive players are not happy because they cannot react to the bashes anymore. It's clear, it's a super big cope. Oh, it's such bad changes for the game. Why? Oh, well, you see, I can't react anymore. That's obviously trash. You can't say that. That's not a valid argument in at any point in time. But that's out of the picture for now. That's why most people are complaining about it.
Yeah, you keep hearing that. That is why I said it's like nobody's making a proper case for anything. It's the same as when the console players during the CCU were complaining, "Oh, I can't react to lights anymore." I'm getting that very same energy, and
Yeah.
I think that is, yeah, like you said, it just can't be an argument to begin with.
However, my like a very big bracket to make at the beginning is that my issues with the update aren't really as much tied to the changes that are coming now in this very TG, but more towards the changes that are to come after this TG may or may not come to life. Because there's certain changes that need to be made if this was to come to life, and some changes that you can no longer make. So, but we'll talk about that later. Another very apparently controversial take, which is coming from me. I will not say anybody else is in favor of it, but I'm saying it and I'm 100% sure of it, and that's that it is fine to make every bash 300, 500. You're going to hear a lot of players whining, oh, but my 100 to 500 heroes, Warlord, BP, Conk, oh, they're all dead. GG.
Yeah, to be honest, I think that is probably a change we cannot avoid anyways. From
Yeah,
what
I mean,
Ubisoft has said so far, this is clear as day. 300, 500 is gonna become standard. 100, 500 bashes are gonna get removed. Most
yeah.
likely, I'd bet on that.
While these are actually considered and usually named shit bashes, because before Legion kicks started to get standardized and everybody had the Legion kick, everybody had 100 to 500 kicks, and it was just that's what people were used to. That's what was better, obviously, for bigger delay windows, making it harder to react to. But I'll be the first one to say, and that's coming from a player that I've played at the highest level, and I've been a reaction player for 4 years, and I'll tell you that 300 to 500 bashes are fine. That's a good change to make. It's gonna help console a lot because, like the devs intend with the change of having, oh, you can see the dodge forward and make a read whether to dodge or not based on that. That's good. I know, like for example, Warlord is like triple, quadruple S tier and 1v1s on console just because he has the 100 to 500 bash, which means they basically have a bash out of neutral, like without any input, which is what makes it so strong. But now people will be able to make reads. It's gonna be better for them. And as far as PC is concerned, this is where it's gonna get a bit complicated. I'll say that I don't think there is anybody on any platform at any level of play that would rather get hit by the same move over and over again than get hit by different moves. For example, we're going to compare Conk to BP. I think that's a pretty fair comparison to make. So you have Conk, who right now I believe is the only hero that has offense that will not work at all at high level. And that is due to reactability. However, That is because he just has a bash from neutral. So when you have a reactable bash, I can focus on that bash, react to it every time, and there's nothing else for me to worry about. That's why Kong suffers at the highest level, but is an absolute noob stomper or does much better against people who are forced to make reads because they cannot react. But then you have something like BP, which has the same speed bash, sure, a different window, but the same speed bash, but has that extra move, that extra dodge forward heavy, that makes the move more unreactable, or well, less reactable, whatever you want to say, compared to Kong. And again, I'll say, I think whoever you are, you'd rather get mixed up between a bash and a dodge forward heavy, rather than getting hit by the bash over and over again, or then, oh, well, wow, he didn't bash, he got broke. It's infuriating, it's shallow, very shallow gameplay-wise, and I think everybody agrees that it will be better to have more options to get hit by than just one that is incredibly strong. Right?
Yes, I fully agree. Fully agree on that. I mean, it's a very common complaint, right? I get spammed by this and that move. And yeah, I don't think that anybody's going to disagree here.
Some good examples I can give, since I was talking about examples, is Griffin. Griffin is considered to have some of the worst offense from neutral, at least for the most part of the character's life. But recently they made his dodge forward light enhanced, which means it didn't bounce off of block. And that actually, at least in 4v4, in the context of 4v4 where you have a lot of stuff to worry about, team fights, 2v2s, points to remember, whatever, his offense is actually incredibly strong. And I've been using him at the highest level between the best and the second best team in the game. And I've actually been having a lot, and I mean a lot of success with his offense from neutral, just mixing up that bash with the dodge forward light. If people are wondering how is this move considered a mix-up at high level, if I pre-dodge the bash, I dodge the light as well. It's a bit more complicated than that. It's about the chain that comes after, but I'll probably be answering stuff like that in comments rather than explaining it in the video. Let's see. All right, so this is where I get into the part of what effect this change would have for the future of the game, more long-term speaking. So we have right now, imagine this, TG comes to life. We have a incredibly strong neutral offense for most of the heroes. There's some that still don't, but those are outliers. So then we have neutral offense, which is arguably as strong, if not stronger, than your chain offense. Currently, the average is between a bash that lands 12 to 13 damage or a garbage that lands around 24 damage. So we're doing 12/24 for a neutral mix-up that is easier to access, safer, and the same damage as your chain offense. What this means is that there is no point for most of the characters to use your chain offense. We've seen this a lot where, for example, with Aphira, which is the same even now, where she has the unreactable thing from neutral, which is her feintable bash. However, her chain, which is the chain kick / undodgeable / UB, is pretty reactable. Which is why, for example, in the dual frenzy, you never saw anybody use that. They just used the neutral or the kick after dodge, after the flip, because
yeah.
that one is 400 or something, or it is unreactable. So then, what is the next logical change after making the neutral offense way stronger than your chain offense? It would be to buff chain offense, because this is a fact. It doesn't matter. There's no real argument against this. Chain offense is supposed to be stronger than neutral offense, because that's why it's chain offense. That's why you have to get to it to be able to benefit of its higher damage. I don't know, like higher success rate or whatever. But when it's backwards, then you have to buff chain offense. So how do you buff chain offense? There's one of two things. One, you raise the damage, and this is instantly out of the question because we already have a damage issue, and I believe you actually have a video on this about power creep and damage getting too high again.
I do.
And so, and most people agree that damage should be lowered across the board again. So raising the damage so that it's, I guess, risk reward is out of the question. So then the other option is make chain completely unreactable as well. What you have then is your neutral's unreactable and your chain's unreactable. And pretty much that's just gonna be button mashing. Besides the fact that most of the characters, if you give everybody unreactable offense across the board, most of the characters will blend together, and but my character identity is not gonna be there anymore. You also have that of it's mostly button mashing, and nobody will enjoy that either. And I don't think anybody would enjoy playing a game where nothing is ever reactable. You can never tell what's happening. You're just pressing A or B, option A or option B to maybe counter something, and then you do the wrong read, you eat the damage, and then you repeat that until the fight is over. It's not fun. It's not enjoyable.
Yeah.
Again,
Well,
very shallow.
I mean, you have that already for many players, right? Like
Perfect
console
segue.
is already
Perfect segue into my next
perfect.
point.
Okay. Okay.
This is the biggest comment coming from the people who are like, why don't you like the changes? It's this thing of, oh, nothing changes for the people who can't react anyways. I don't believe that. I think that's false. While definitely a lot more will be changing for the people who could react before, uh, saying that nothing changes for the people who can't react is a bad thing, because I still think that, especially after having tried it, now that the TG was out for what, 4 or 5 days, the pacing of fights is different, and the what you expect, what you want to throw out is also very different. And a thing that I assume most people will dislike is that a change like this will push a lot more towards interrupting. And we already have, I won't call it an issue, but this sort of like problem going around where everybody will just interrupt everything.
Yeah, this is also why people like keep request and hype armor, right? Because they're tired of getting interrupted.
People are stuck on the I don't want to be interrupted, give me hyper armor, instead of taking a moment and learning about frame advantage, because that's what frame advantage is for, to not be able to be interrupted. But yeah, that's another thing. I think the game will change a lot for everyone, and I don't think it's going to change in a good way for one side and a bad way for the other. I think it's a negative change for both sides, while a bit less negative for the people who are already making reads. But
Yeah.
stuff will change, and the game will feel very one-dimensional.
Let me just interject here real quick, because you mentioned frame advantage, because I think that is the reactability is like less of an issue for most, but what will be very apparent very quickly is that faster bashes will also mean that frame advantage rules change, and these bashes
Yep.
can more easily interrupt, and it's not as easy as just slapping like an extra 33 ms on a recovery at the end of a move just to like counterbalance that. Especially when we're looking at like 400 ms bashes, you can't just increase or decrease recoveries 100 ms here and there. It's, I don't know, maybe they can, but I think that is more of an issue that will affect everybody, even doesn't matter whether you could react or not, but this you will feel. I think that is more of an issue we're going to have to talk about in the future if any of these changes come to fruition. But yeah, just interjecting that real quick.
I mean, it's a very good point, and again, like, this is, since we talked about this, again, I can use this as a segue into the next, which is a sort of side point that I have to make, and that's the reason a lot of people feel like their offense is not working. The reason a lot of people don't know about frame advantage is for this game, and that's saying this today on the 18th of June, 2023, which is post rework of the tutorials. We have no learning material about the actual fundamentals of the game. I'm sure everybody is hating on the tutorials enough already, but frame advantage, especially considering a change like this, will probably be the most important thing to know in the game. In across all game modes, across everything, it's probably going to be the most important rule that you are forced to follow always, and that you have to use. You have to abuse frame advantage in order to make it actually fair, because you can no longer react, you can no longer do these things, you can no longer interrupt in the same way, or you can interrupt more. Things change. We already have complained that there is no learning material for tags, for how revenge actually works. There's barely anything for ganks. Only recently have we had people actually showcase ganks so that casual players can learn how to gank. And now you have this thing, people have no clue what frame advantage is. There's a lot of people who you'll tell, oh, that's a thing because of frame advantage, and they will have no clue what you mean. They have no clue what that is. So, again, big problem. People need to have something to learn from. And like I said, a lot of the offense doesn't work because people don't know how to use their offense. If I'm fighting a warlord who is frame advantage galore, and I just keep pressing my buttons, my offense is never going to land because my offense cannot land. It doesn't matter what read he made, he's using frame advantage, I'm not. He's always going to beat me. And obviously then I can say, oh, my offense never lands. It never could in the first place. But yeah, big line, big subject, learning material, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Another very clear issue with a change like this is what everybody loves, ganking. Think about it this way. Currently, and this is again from the POV of a high-level player where ganks are the name of the game, ganks are already incredibly broken when you have heroes like Shinobi, heroes like Scent, heroes like Shaolin that Valk just sweep you left and right, stagger, bomb, resets hit stun, go again. It's very rare that you find a gank that will not 100 to 1 you or 100 to 5. That's being percent of HP. If you get ganked successfully, which is very common at high level, it's very rare that people mess up ganks. You're left with 5 to 10% of your total HP, in which case you're left to 1v on something that's really unfavorable or whatever. And that's not even mentioning that you could just not be having that HP in the first place. You're half HP, you're just gonna be dead. And the current issue with ganks is not the initiation of ganks, but the gank itself. But now imagine that initiation is going to be completely unreactable for everyone, and you no longer need a mix-up to land it. You will no longer need a bait or something. You don't need this coordination that you have. You can just say, wait, I'm going to kick, I'm sent, I kick, my kick lands. If we do the gank, that's 100 is your gank. And hopefully ganks will be looked at. It's a very big problem. But I feel like people are overlooking the effects of a change like this on 4v4. Because this is a good change for 1v1. A very good change for 1v1. Nobody can say anything against that. It's a very good change for 1v1. It speeds it up, makes it more enjoyable to watch, more enjoyable to play. But I still think that this should be a 4v4 focused game, not a 1v1 focused game. The fighting system is not built around 1v1. And last time we saw updates and patches coming focused on 1v1, we had the first into the fray. I don't need to say anything extra on that, but I still think this is supposed to be a 4v4 focused game. And if they focus more on 1v1s, oh, we want to fix this issue in 1v1, good job. Now 1v1 is more playable, but 4v4 is declining in quality more and more. Ganks that destroy you. Offense that is completely unavoidable, feats that are incredibly strong and need to be banned in order for it to be fair. All this sort of stuff piles up on top of each other, and you're just making 4s unplayable. Another pretty interesting thing to think about. It might not be for you if you're just worrying about playing the game, but me trying to look at this from the dev's perspective and what is possible to change, what is not possible to change, what is favorable, what isn't. You have the topic of how much does something cost to make, what is a budget, how does that work. These people work on a budget that they have. If they had infinite budget, we'd have some crazy looking game, but we don't. So I wanted to say that changes that we've seen recently, good or bad, the carpet changes, like how do I call that?
Blanket changes, yeah.
Blanket changes, yeah, just making everything the same. That's not necessarily easier, but it is definitely cheaper to do. I don't know how their economics work internally, but I am assuming that that's definitely cheaper to do than, for example, what I said. People want to see different animations. People want to see these big, awesome animations with spins and like a fear of feats and crazy stuff. That's very expensive to do, and you don't have to be a game dev to know that. So obviously, number changes are going to be much more favorable. But my point is that a change like this, it's sort of a band-aid. it's cheap, it fixes the issue, whatever, whatever. But I think it creates a lot more issues that will need addressing in the future. Some of those being like what I mentioned about chains, and you're going to have, if you make this change go live across the board, you will have to change chain offense for mostly everyone as well. And then some characters will need more attention than others. I think we're very close to having a roster that has working offense across the board. And I think that the only character that really suffers a lot, like I said, was Kong. Other than that, I cannot think of a character that doesn't have some offense that will work. Obviously, some work better than others, but if we were to say, if Kong was to get, I don't know, a dodge forward something to help his bash, and then that would make his bash unreactable without actually having to speed it up, then across the board we would have working offense, and it would look better. People would like it more. Just, I've said it already, we want this type of stuff, not blanket changes, because the blanket changes will never turn out well. Sometimes they can bring good things, but then you have stuff like the dodge TG, which I've still yet to meet a person who says that they like the dodge changes, the dodge and the guard on dodge, all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean,
Like I said in the beginning, it's you offering an alternative. Regarding the chain offense, I think there's gonna have to be changes anyways. Like you pointed out, Afira is like half of it is unreactable, the other half isn't, and other characters have the same issue. I think this is just an unavoidable issue we have to tackle eventually, no matter whether neutral bashes are going to get sped up or not, or how neutral offense looks. This is just something that will come no matter what, I think.
so a quick TLDR for all of the ranting and stuff that I just did is: one, feedback issues. Currently, feedback is, I think, misinterpreted. It's hard to get a good idea of what's actually happening. Two, reactability. Reactability is misunderstood by everybody at every level, in my opinion, and I explained why earlier. And three, the actual changes, the TG itself. While the fundamentals of the change is good and it comes from a good place to make this stuff unreactable, it causes and creates a lot more problems than it really fixes. And I don't think, this is very important, I do not think you can ship the Bash TG to live without other changes accompanying it, like gank changes or defense buffs of some sort. Because then it's just gonna be very skewed into one side. That's about it.
So we're gonna have to hope that what they're gonna implement, and especially what speeds they're gonna pick for which bash, is the most sensible possible, and that, like you said, we don't introduce more problems than before.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right, so we're gonna leave it at that. Just gonna say goodbye, everybody. Oh no, that's not what I say. Latest, everybody, is what I say.